What happens when the leadership development consultant who's never written a line of code decides to build 20 AI agents? Nathalie Salles spent her career in human development, first coaching individuals, then scaling those practices at Facebook and Google. Now she's doing a PhD on AI, workplace, and gender, and somewhere along the way, she became a builder. She taught herself NAN with zero coding experience and built a pipeline that processes over 1,500 research papers automatically. When she showed it to software engineers, they said, "Your results are better than ours." Now she's building AI agents for her coaching clients and helping leaders understand what human AI collaboration actually looks like in practice. I'm Dina Levitan, and this is Automate Yourself. Welcome, Natalie, to the Automate Yourself into a New Career podcast. Natalie started out her career in talent development at Facebook and Google. She rose to be a VP, and in the last 3 years, she's been working on a PhD in the topic of AI, workplace, and gender. So I'm really excited to have Natalie on the conversation today, and I'd love to kick it over to you to hear a little bit more about your background from your journey in leadership development consulting and now working in the research field. Can you give us a
Yeah.
60-second version of your
Yeah, yeah,
path?
yeah. I've had like three main buckets when you think about it. So I've had the like working with individuals and teams, so very focused on human development. And then I kind of moved to like in organizations, how do you scale those practices? So the first one was how do you understand humans? The second was how do you understand what business needs? And then how do you scale human within the context of the workplace? And now I'm much more focusing on what do we know about AI and how is this impacting HR processes? So, like, for example, performance reviews. And is it impacting performance reviews in a positive way from a gender lens or not? So that's really what I'm doing. I have also kind of like in that bucket, I'm way more interested in building with AI right now. So I have a practitioner side of me that just couldn't, wait to be done with a PhD.
When did you start experimenting with AI and what drew you to it initially?
I mean, when I was at Facebook, I worked with the AI team, so more from a coaching and team development perspective, and I was really fascinated by what they were doing. So I had that kind of like it was before ChatGPT, before we all became aware that there was something called AI, and within that there was something called Gen AI that enabled all of us access that we didn't have before. And so once I had that little bug and I wanted to do a PhD and I wanted to understand like women in the workplace, and oftentimes performance management is like the thing that keeps us, it's like the life cycle of an employee. Like what is going to be my review? How does that dictate where I'm going to go next in my career? And it was really the starting point of a lot of AI coming out and saying, hey, we know how to solve that problem. There won't be any bias. And so I got really curious and I started to study it. And the more I was studying it, the more depressing it was actually because there was a lot of like evidence that there were a lot of biases. That led me to, and I guess that's my personality. When I don't understand something, I kind of dive in instead of like running away from it. So I started to dive in and met some people, some AI builders that had very similar values and were very connected to how can we build something that is actually going to be good for people rather than bad for them.
Mhm.
And so I kind of found my tribe and I'm now where I am because I found my tribe. I guess we all want to belong somewhere and that's the place I belong to now.
Amazing. Would love to hear a little bit about your focus, your research focus as you've been doing your PhD. You had mentioned that a typical PhD student might work with like 200 research sources, but now you've gotten to a point where you're processing over 1,500. How did you realize that you wanted to automate the process and what does that look like?
Everything is kind of accelerating right now. So part of what's happening is I think there were about 17,000 papers written from, the beginning of time until 2020. And then within 2 years, you had 24,000 papers being produced. So it's like we did in 2 years more than we did since the beginning of time, since the 50s when AI became a topic. And so if you want to do something related to academia, it made a lot of sense for me to kind of combine my love of building with AI tools and my understanding of, what works and what doesn't with AI tools and creating a way for me to analyze the thousands of articles that are coming out. So in some ways I didn't necessarily feel like it was a choice. I had to find a way to dig into like all of those papers and everything they were saying.
Yeah, they say that necessity is the mother of invention, right?
That's exactly what was going on for me. Like, I was feeling completely overwhelmed. Like, I am still feeling overwhelmed. I guess, like we all are. I'm talking to a lot of people about cognitive load and like it's just all of the AI tools that are out there, whether we're on the road in terms of whether we actually on the highway, the AI highway or not. Like, we're all kind of more dazzled and troubled and confused in many ways than we used to be because it's going faster than our brain is.
Yeah, there's a lot of information and we're trying to absorb as fast as possible. So tell me a little bit about how your literature review process looks like now that you're using AI versus how it would have worked traditionally.
So now, like the way it typically works in academia is you take your papers, all of your papers, and then you put them into a repository. Mine is called Zotero. It's for citations. And it's also to make sure that you don't forget any. So, and then once you have those, typically you kind of go one by one and you read them. You make your own notes and then you write your lit review based on like you put them in buckets of the themes and then you write your lit review. But because I couldn't physically read, 1,500, 2,000 papers and books, like I had to do something different. So I decided to automate everything through a tool that is called N8N. Um, and I'm a little stubborn, so I decided to take the tool that was the least easy, but the most like the one that the
Powerful.
coders are using. Yeah, the most powerful. Because I wanted to see if I could do that since the premise of AI is can you do that by yourself? And so I spent a good 6 weeks just living, breathing, developing, coding when I had never touched anything. So my brain was exploding with all the different new learning every day. But part of what I'm doing now is I'm taking all of those from Zotero, I'm migrating them to Notion, I'm extracting the text from them. I've built AI assistants that are specifically focused on how do you extract information related to either a feminist lens or looking at is this paper going to, because of its premise, because of the worldview that it has, is it going to amplify the problem or is it going to actually um, like lower the problem? So all of that is happening and then it's being processed and on you go.
Yeah, that's amazing. Especially, you describe yourself as a non-techie through and
I'm a
through.
non-techie all the way through.
You didn't even know what an API was before you
Nope.
started doing that.
No.
So, how does it feel to be automating your academic research?
It's really empowering. It's a little bit of isolating just because I don't know anyone who's done that before. Actually, of all places, today I found one paper and I was so excited. So right after we talk, I'm actually going to go read it. But it's exhilarating. It's like I'm doing things now that I would have never thought about even being able to touch before.
Wow, that's amazing. And you're really taking to heart this kind of new skill set, new
Yeah.
career directions with the technology available.
I think what really just struck me the most is when I presented it to software engineers and architects, and they were like, "Wow, your results are better than ours." I was like, "What do you mean? I thought I was like, basically, you were gonna give me notes on everything I'm doing." And they're like, "No, your process is beating the pants out of us." I had this moment of, okay, so what does that mean for human AI collaboration? So I think that's where I'm going next, which is what does it look like to collaborate well? And what does it look like to not collaborate well? And I think there's a lot of learning for us as humans to be able to do that effectively.
Would love to hear more about that. Give me an example of a scenario where you're collaborating with AI and you think it's going well, or maybe there's some room
Or
for
where it's
improvement.
not going well. So it's actually really interesting because oftentimes now I have a lot of friends that are like, so how do you learn AI? I'm like, well, the first step. And a lot of people are thinking, well, you need to have like courses. And I think it's important to understand the context, but it's also very important to be able to get in front of a tool and try it out and improve upon how we're engaging with that tool. There are things now that I didn't know, so I fell through the trap. For example, when I develop an entire NAN node, the large language models that I'm working with to help me do the coding or help me do the interface or think about what I'm supposed to put where, oftentimes will have information up until the beginning of 2025. And so what it means is the information that they are supposed to have to help me be interface with this particular platform has changed. So now they're giving me the wrong kind of information. And I have to figure out myself, I have to debug everything. That is not something that I was thinking about before. It's helped me also realize that it's not perfect. So oftentimes I will give it a piece of text or I will say, hey, I want this to be happening. And part of what will happen, it'll be like, oh, that is so brilliant. You're so wonderful. Let
Yeah.
me actually give you like 20 pages on this thing that my brain can't connect with. Like it's way too long. So oftentimes what I've learned to do is to basically say, hey, now I'm in a think mode with you. I'm in a collaboration mode with you, which means that I'm writing a paragraph, you're writing a paragraph. So I have to codify and lead the collaboration much more than I thought I needed to. And that's really helped me think about me as the person who's structuring and who's asking for my needs to be met, which at a personal level is never something I've learned to do. So now I'm learning to actually connect with what are my needs. And my need is for you to write something succinct so I can think, I can respond, and we can kind of have this kind of conversation. That is not something I would have known before. Before, I was actually seeing those 20 pages being printed and thinking, oh, that's how it works. And there was a problem with me because I don't understand and I'm feeling lost. So I've learned that that's actually not the case. It's not about me. It's about how do we interact in a way that works for the large language model and the way that works for me.
Yeah, and being explicit and super detailed, giving the context that the model needs in order to return the results that you
Exactly.
desire. That's a whole skill set in and of itself. And so putting in the time, putting in those reps to build out that skill set, it's incredible what you've been doing. I would love to hear a little bit more about what you've been building in the HR space. I know you're using some of your past experience in the HR space and talent development and integrating that with AI. How's that going?
It's very impressive. I'm looking at what I was able to experiment with and thinking this is one of my clients, like just a few days ago, told me the results that we were able to accomplish with your AI assistants are actually better than like LinkedIn does from a LinkedIn recruiter perspective.
Tell me about the setup. Like, how are you forming your team of AI agents?
So I wanted to experiment. The dissertation has given me a framework of how to think about HR and how to think about some of the practices that can be helpful or not for the different functions of HR. I didn't have HR colleagues to talk to, so I decided to actually build a HR AI colleagues so I could like it's always about cognitive load for me. So I could talk to someone who would be just thinking about performance management or talking to, in this case, a tool that is only going to be focusing on HR analytics or on legal or on compensation. Because when you're in HR, it's not monolithic. Like you can grow up in HR and actually have completely diverse ways of like knowledge and skills and ways of thinking. So I wanted to kind of integrate all of those and have their feedback as I was going through the process. And I was able to develop like 15 to 20 AI agents that have like specific functions from hiring all the way to performance management, and I was not thinking about doing anything with it. But part of what happened is I had some friends and they were like, oh, that's really interesting what you're doing. So, and I had some chief people officers whom I'm connected to, and they were like, can you do this? So we were having like focused sessions with my AI tools. I would just basically say, hey, like you talk, you ask your questions. I'm recording it here. We're putting it into the chat and then we're going to be having them talk to one another within the environment. And they're like, we developed location strategies, we developed legal plans for Europe, which I know nothing about. And just like we started to actually do a lot of things that I knew nothing about. But my goal was experimenting. So I was not trying to build a product. I was trying to think about how can I augment myself and how can I augment the humans that I'm working with. And so that's what I do. When I can't be with them, I'll just build them an AI assistant and then I'll just teach them how to plug it into a project in Claude or GPT or something that is simple for them. And I'll just let them free and they go experiment.
So it sounds like what you're actually doing is you have this generalist HR skill set and you're going to specific assistants that are specialists in areas that you haven't gone super deep into yourself.
That's
For
exactly it.
example, the European regulations, and you're leveraging AI in those areas where you don't necessarily have the expertise.
Exactly.
Wow. So you're doing this for not just for yourself, you're doing this for your clients. How has working with AI been able to transform what you're doing for your clients and for your consulting business?
As I was doing my PhD, I started to get people saying, hey, can you help me with this? I had a CPO or two who said, could you train my team? So part of what I started to do was think about, okay, human first. So we need to actually give humans the understanding of what it means to work with an AI tool, what to do, what not to do, how to think about it. I learned a ton from that. I learned, for example, that we have a tendency to actually trust it in a way that is not healthy. That's a very natural way of being for us. I didn't know why, but that's what's happening. And part of what I started to realize is they actually love it. So now when I have a leader whom I might be coaching, I have someone at Google right now whom I just did an AI assistant on both the topics that he wanted to work on, as well as the behaviors that he wanted to work on and kind of go deeper with. And so now he has like the capacity to exchange. It's like thinking about AI almost like as a mirror. You're talking to it and it's mirroring back certain things to you. And it's not going to replace me or anyone else, but it augments his and it accelerates his learning capabilities.
Yeah, that's great. And that's one way you can scale your expertise and knowledge for your clients without needing to be with them when their question arises. So that's good for your business as well.
There is that, but for me, what's also incredibly important is how do we get as many diverse people understanding what AI is so we can create change from the inside. And so that's my way of like it's about like extending myself or it's about delegating, but it's also very much about how do I give power to people who might not have had a chance to use those tools to understand how they can augment themselves. That's my vision, what's guiding me. How do I help others grow now that I've seen what it can do?
How do you empower others? How do you give them ideas, inspire them to use new tools that they might not know about and to be
Exactly.
more effective in their roles? So you mentioned a little bit about some of the struggles that you've had with automation tools, debugging. What has been some of the challenge on your journey? What would you advise someone who wants to start automating? Maybe
Mhm.
they feel overwhelmed with the tool choices or they're not sure how to go about it. What would you recommend?
I would not start with an 8N if they don't code. I wouldn't do the same
Very
thing that I
fair.
did. I would start with working with an assistant first. I wouldn't try to do anything agentic because even just working with an assistant is helping us understand like the behavior, the places where it will hallucinate, the places where it will like basically go down a path that you don't want. all the little tips and tricks that you can do. Just that is awesome. So a lot of people are saying, "Oh, I'm just doing GPT for writing or for responding." I'm like, "That's great. Why don't you actually use that, but do it in a more focused way and build an AI assistant on top of GPT, for example?" That's how you can kind of get a taste for it. And then from there, then I would focus on how do you string like the different modules that you've built in your assistant of I want you to do this and I want you to do that and I want you to do, this third thing. Instead of like cramming everything into one big set of instructions, how do you take them and put them in different sets of AI tools talking to one another in an agentic way?
Nice. As you've been diving in, how has this journey changed how you think about your professional identity? Do you still consider yourself a leadership development consultant? Are you something new and different?
I I don't know yet. What I do know is I got the AI bug. I'm never going back. I want to study it. I want to work with it. I want to understand it. I want to bring humans along with it. I want to talk about the real harm it does and the ways in which it's amplifying inequity. I want to do it all. So I know that, like, no matter what, I've never felt like as free as in the past 2 years, where I have an idea and I go do it. Before I had an idea and then I would have needed to pay 20,000 to someone to actually build it and I couldn't. So there's a bunch of things that I wanted to do I could never do. And so now there is a real possibility of me staying in building AI. And according to software engineers, it looks like I have some gift at it. So why not? And I do think that it's important to bring humans along with it. So I think my niche is going to be something around human AI collaboration
Hmm.
and how to think about that collaboration in a way that is good for humans, which is not what we're seeing right now in the business world.
Not always, yeah. If you could automate yourself out of your current work, what would you want to automate yourself into?
I would want to actually build the ability to find my tribe.
Mm,
Because, like, people who are passionate about those different topics, it's a little bit of a unicorn world, and think about unicorn as it's, like, great. I think about it as very lonely. And so there is a way to actually connect with other humans who are building something similar and or struggling or loving it or pushing through. It'd be awesome.
fantastic. Well, thank you so much for your time, Natalie. It was a wonderful conversation and excited to follow in your journey and continue to stay in touch.
Thank you.
One thing Natalie said really hit home. She described this work as exhilarating but isolating. And then later, I've never felt as free as in the past 2 years. I have an idea and I go do it. That's what Automate Yourself is all about. Finding those who are entering this brave new world with excitement instead of fear. People like Natalie who dive in instead of running away, who build things they never thought they could, and who bring others along with them. If you enjoyed this episode, follow the show wherever you listen and drop us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. And subscribe at newsletter.chalaborate.com. I'm Dina Levitan reminding you automate yourself into more of what you love.